Hi everyone, my name is Jinjun M. Buagas. I will be your reporter this afternoon, and my topic is all about separating mixtures.
Alright, but first, what is a mixture? When two or more materials or substances are mixed together but do not chemically combine, this means they retain their original properties, and this means they can be separated by physical means. And as we all know, there are two kinds of mixture, and those are heterogeneous and homogeneous. Now, heterogeneous is any mixture that is not uniform, and homogeneous is uniform, or rather uniform in composition. Separating mixtures. The individual substances in a mixture can be separated using different methods and depending on the type of mixture. These methods include filtration, evaporation, distillation, and chromatography. And there are three types of mixtures. First, suspension, second, colloidal, and third, solution. So for suspension mixture, they have large solute particles. Solute is actually the material you add. And for colloidal mixture, they have much smaller particles, while for solution, its mixture is completely dissolved into the solvent. And what is solvent? Solvent is the material you are adding to. So if a substance does not dissolve in a solvent, we say that it is insoluble. For example, sand does not dissolve in water, so it is insoluble. Now, for the method in separating solids from liquids, filtration is used. So filtration is a method for separating an insoluble solid from a liquid. When a mixture of sand and water is filtered, the sand stays behind in the filter paper and the water passes through the filter paper. So, when the sand stays behind in the filter paper, that is called the residue, while for the water passes through the filter paper, that is the filtrate. Well, I hope this picture is visible on your end. It shows here a beaker with the mixture, a filter funnel, and a filter paper. So a beaker containing the mixture of insoluble solid and liquid. There is filter paper in a filter funnel above another beaker. So the mixture is being poured into the filter funnel, and the liquid particles are small enough to pass through the filter paper as a filtrate. The solid particles are too large to pass through the filter paper and stay behind as a residue. So from the mixture, the solid is now being separated from the liquid. So we use filtration in separating insoluble solid from a liquid. Now the next one is evaporation. So it is used also in separating solids from liquids, only that it is used for soluble solid. So evaporation is used to separate a soluble solid from a liquid. For example, copper sulfate is soluble in water, so it can be dissolved. Its crystals dissolve in water to form a copper sulfate solution. So one of the type of mixture solution. So again, solution, its mixture is completely dissolved into the solvent. Now, during evaporation, the water evaporates away, leaving solid copper sulfate crystals behind. So, for a clearer view about the evaporation method, let's see to the next slide, the picture. So here in the picture, a solution is placed in an evaporating basin and heated with a Bunsen burner. So during the process, solution becoming more concentrated, thus leaving the soluble solid at the bottom. So the volume of the solution has decreased because some of the water has evaporated. So solid particles begin to form in the basin. So after the process is done, all the water has evaporated, leaving solid crystals behind. So here, the copper sulfate solution during the evaporation Only the copper sulfate crystals was left behind. Alright, again, so in evaporation, we separate, or it is a method to be used in separating soluble solid from a liquid. Now, for our next topic, it is about distillation. There are two types of distillation. There is simple distillation and fractional distillation. Now, here for simple distillation, it is used in separating the solvent from a solution. So it's the other way around um, from the evaporation method. So here in the solution, we're going to separate the solvent or the material we are adding to. For example, water can be separated from salt solution by simple distillation. This method works because water has a much lower boiling point than salt. When the solution is heated, the water evaporates. It is then cooled and condensed into a separate container. So basically, the salt here will not evaporate. So every pure substance has its own particular melting point and boiling point. One way to check the purity of the separated liquid is to measure its boiling point. For example, pure water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So if it contains any dissolved solids, its boiling point will be higher than that. Alright, so again here, we are going to um, separate the solvent from the solution. So an example here in the picture, as you can see, we have here a salt solution. So a salt solution is now being heated. So the solution is there in the flask with a heater, and then there is also a condenser, the one with arrows, and a beaker, the one or it is to be used to where the water will be transferred. All right, so as the water evaporates, its vapors rises. So the water vapor passes into the condenser where it cools and condenses. Liquid water now drips into the beaker. All right, so lastly, all the water has evaporated from the salt solution, leaving the salt behind in the flask. Now the water is now being transferred in the beaker. So another type of distillation is a fractional distillation. So it is used to separate a liquid from a mixture. So fractional distillation is a method for separating a liquid from a mixture of two or more liquids. For example, liquid ethanol can be separated from a mixture of ethanol and water by fractional distillation. This method works because the liquids in the mixture have different boiling points. So when the mixture is heated, one liquid evaporates. And one way to check the purity of the separated liquids is to measure their boiling points. For example, pure ethanol boils at 78 degrees Celsius and pure water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So in the flask, there is a water and ethanol solution. So a water and ethanol mixture is heated in a flask using an electric heater. Vapor forms in the air above the mixture in the flask. So there is also a condenser and a beaker. The boiling point of ethanol is 78 degrees Celsius. Ethanol vapor passes into the condenser where it is cooled and condensed. So now the liquid ethanol drips into a beaker. So from the picture there in the process, the ethanol is now being separated from the water. And now for the water to be separated, as you can see there, the boiling point of the water is at 100 degree Celsius. So another beaker was used. So when the water vapor passes through the condenser, it is being cooled and it will be condensed. Thus, liquid water now drips into the beaker. So again, fractional distillation is a method for separating a liquid from a mixture of two or more liquids. Thus, as you can see in the picture, um, the water is one of the mixture, or I'm sorry, one of the liquid, and then the other one liquid is the ethanol. And lastly, separating dissolved solids, and the method is chromatography. And one here is a paper chromatography. So paper chromatography is a method for separating dissolved substances from one another. It is often used when the dissolved substances are colored, such as inks, food colorings, and plant dyes. It works because some of the colored substances dissolve in the solvent used better than the others. So they travel farther from each other. So the picture there shows a chromatography experiment. A pure substance will only produce one spot on the chromatogram during paper chromatography. Two substances will be the same if they produce the same color of spot and their spots travel the same distance up the paper. In the example as shown in the picture, red, blue, and yellow are three pure substances. So as for a clearer picture of it, here in the picture, a pencil line is drawn and spots of ink or plant dye are placed on it. There is a container of solvent such as water or ethanol. So we don't know yet what are the colors or how many colors will be separated during this process. So here, the paper is now being lowered into the solvent. The solvent travels up through the paper, taking some of the colored substances with it. So there are, I believe there are three pictures now that are visible. So as the solvent continues to travel up the paper, the different colored substances spread apart. In this example, the colors separated substances are yellow, red, and black. Okay, so that is for the paper chromatography. For this next slide is actually a video, but it will take time to us to discuss about that topic. It's just the same as what I have discussed in the previous slides. So let's continue. As for the summary, mixtures can be separated using a variety of techniques. Chromatography involves solvent separation on a solid medium. Distillation takes advantage of differences in boiling points. Evaporation removes a liquid from a solution to leave a solid material, and filtration separates solids of different sizes. Now, there are also some of the common methods of separating substances or mixtures. First one we have here hand picking process. It's very simple. This method involves simply picking out all the unwanted substances by hand and separating them from useful ones. The separated substances may be an impurity that has to be thrown away, or maybe that both the separated substances are useful. For example, if you separate black grapes from green ones, form a mixture of the two. So it's very understandable. Next one is threshing. This method is mostly done during the harvesting of crops. Normally, the stalks of the wheat are dried once it is harvested. The grain is then separated from the stalks and grounded into the floor by beating the dry stalks to shake off the dried grains. So just look at the picture there. I know you all know about this. So again, it is also very understandable. So here is the next one is sieving. Well, my apologies for some clerical error here in this slide. Just don't mind what is written there. It is actually not the correct meaning of sieving. So sieving. Sieving is a method used for separating solids from liquids or larger pieces of something from a smaller pieces, or simply straining solids from liquids for separating coarser from finer particles or for reducing soft solids to a pulp. So in the picture there, it is a flour that is being sieved. So I know you are familiar with this kind of process or method. Alright, so next one is winnowing. or winnowing. When the grains are collected from the process of threshing, it needs to be cleared out of husk and shafts before it is turned into flour. Normally, the separation of the mixture is carried out with the help of wind or blowing air. The husk and chaff are blown away by the strong wind when the farmers drop the mixture from a certain height to the ground. The heavier grains are collected at one place. So usually when winnowing process is being used by farmers. Next, sedimentation. Sedimentation is a process by which heavier impurities present in liquid, normally water, settle down at the bottom of the container containing the mixture. While this process actually takes some amount of time, sedimentation is a physical water treatment. So there in the picture, it is a muddy water. So it takes time for the mud and the water to be separated using the sedimentation process. So next, separating funnel. Separating funnel is used mainly to segregate two immiscible liquids. The mechanism involves taking advantage of the unequal density of the particles in the mixture. Oil and water can be easily separated using this technique. So there, with the use of a separating funnel, there is a mixture of kerosene oil and a water. And lastly, magnetic separation. So when one substance in the mixture has some magnetic properties, then this method is quite useful. Strong magnets are commonly used to separate magnetic elements. So there, a magnetic separation process. There is a non-magnetic particles, finely ground or a magnetic roller and a magnetic particles. All right, so that ends for our discussion about separating mixture. Now, for me to end my report, let me read to you a verse from the book of Romans 8, verses 38 to 39. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. So be safe, everyone, and God bless us all.